Well, in the beginning, there was no thoughts of extraordinary. In the beginning, the first thoughts was, I'm alive, because, life could have been much worse, because technically I could have ended up in a cemetery in Ebervale. I could have ended up in a cemetery. So the first feelings was gratitude, and I suppose then, certainly over the last 2 months in hospital, when I started to walk with crutches, I started going to the gym, just doing exercises based on walking, with crutches and a walking frame. And I kept thinking, well, this situation isn't very good, but it's much better than where I was 2 months ago, or 3 months ago, or 4 months ago, So when I left hospital, after 6 months, the first thing I did, and this is no word of a lie, I think it was in month 2 after I'd left hospital, I went back to the gym. So the strange part of the story was, I started cycling in the velodrome in Newport with Disability Sport Wales. And I had an amazing coach called Neil Smith. And Neil had coached disabled riders before they joined British Cycling. So I goes in, meets Neil, explained about my disability, explained that I've raced triathlon, explained that I've been riding a bike since I was about 7 or 8, So cycling was not a problem, it was easy, just doing it with a disability. So Neil said these words to me, and this is quite comical for you, for your audience, okay? He said, okay, I'll go to I'll go down to the cage, which is where they kept the bikes, and I'll go and get you a bike, okay? And then you can have a ride around the velodrome on the floor, on the bottom, okay? I said, yeah, okay, that's great, thank you. Because I had my cycling shoes with me and my supports. And he turned up with this bike, and it had stabilizers on it. I said, what have you got there? He said, well, it's your bike, jump on. I said, but it's got stabilizers. He said, yeah, I know. He said, the last thing I need is you falling off, because you've got 6 pins in your back, and 10 months ago or 9 months ago, you broke your back. I said, I'm not getting on a bike with stabilizers. It's embarrassing. He said, well, you've got 2 choices. You either jump on or you go home. The start of the childhood dream literally just unraveling. So British Cycling came down to Newport.
And then, so the Paralympics came around in 2012, and you won gold in the 3 kilometre individual pursuit. Was there more to it other than doing a lot of training?
There's much more to the work off the bike that helps you when you're on the bike, okay? I got on that track and I looked at one thing and one thing only, which was the black line, okay? The pursuiter's line. And that's all I looked at, because on that track that day, there was only me. There was no other rider in my head. It was just me against the clock, okay? Because if you empty your head of any emotional stress, you can focus on the process, not the outcome, And that's a big thanks to Professor Steve Peters, because I'd never been to an Olympics before. I didn't know what to expect, okay? To me, it was just another 12 laps around the track. And I'll never forget that moment, crossing, the finish line and just hearing the gun going off for the end of the race and looking up at the scoreboard, and there was no time. It just said WR, world record.
Was there ever a moment where you felt some sadness that you were competing as Great Britain rather than Cymru or Wales?
Yeah, and I think, that's certainly something that goes through people's minds, and it certainly went through, my mindset. So it's a shame that there's no other cycling, events for disabled people, whether it's track racing or whether it's time trialing, doesn't matter. In my opinion, you may as well have, disabled athletes as well, because it's a great there's two big benefits, in my opinion. Okay, it's a great spectacle for the crowd. Okay, to see somebody, for instance, who has a disability, whether it's an arm disability, a leg disability, or maybe a vision disability, it doesn't matter, because it inspires that generation. That was the strapline, you know, from London 2012, to inspire a generation. But can you imagine, you know, representing Wales in a cycling event in the Commonwealth Games? How many people in Wales are going to be truly inspired, you know, from seeing a local chap from Tredegar, you know, who's been through hell and back, to suddenly, you know, ride the velodrome?
Do you do training in Wales still, or work with Welsh athletes?
No, and unfortunately, nothing ever came of it, because in 2018, I spoke to Sport Wales, okay, or Sports Wales. I spoke to Disability Sports Wales to show my interest in helping and giving back. You know, having, you know, been a Paralympic champion for 6 years at that point, and knowing how the system works, almost knowing what was needed and how I could use my experience from British cycling, from the world-class program. Okay, so
Why do you think that is, or what's the root cause of that?
I honestly don't know. Okay, I honestly don't know. And I had 4 conversations with 4 different people, and nobody listened. So if nobody's going to listen, I'll just stop talking, you know, and just do my thing. And for me, as a conference speaker, you know, as an international keynote speaker, to date, I've presented at 245 events of various different sizes, from an audience of 50 up to 1,000. Okay, because the FTSE 250 companies that I've presented for and coached know that I've got something to offer. Okay, and unfortunately, some people in certain positions in Cardiff didn't want to listen. Okay, so why, and I'm going to say this, why did Rolls-Royce jet engines in Derby reach out to me in 2018 to present to their senior engineers, 320 of them actually, because they wanted to know, how do you overcome change as a human being? And even the vice president of Rolls-Royce jet engines, a lovely gentleman called Luke Mallows, he said to me, thank you. Okay, you've really made an impact today. You've shared incredible information, and I just want to say thank you. This guy's running Rolls-Royce jet engines, and yet somebody in Cardiff didn't want to listen. So what does that prove? That proves to me that sometimes people in positions of responsibility can be narrow-minded because they don't like change.